Thank you, Jean. So, when we first heard about Everglades restoration in 1995, it was posited as the need to restore the Everglades for the birds and the alligators and our water supply. Well, you know, we could resonate to that because we love birds and we love alligators and we love the natural system. But then on the flip side of that, we discovered that there was another arm to Everglades restoration called Eastern Hope. That was the urban arm that was gonna, as a result of the effort to quote unquote save the Everglades, it was gonna push development back into the urban area where traditionally people of color have lived between the railroad tracks from, you know, Palm Beach all the way down to, practically down to the Keys. So when we told people that it's not just about the birds and the bees, but actually about where you live and whether or not you're going to be able to live there as, you know, different, as the area is gentrified and the tax, you know, structure increases and people who have lived there for generations are pushed out. So then people became really interested. And I want to say that I believe that Jermaine and Cynthia are living at ground zero for Everglades restoration. Ground zero where it's all playing out. And so I want to ask you, Jermaine, as you see your communities dealing with the issues of Everglades restoration, do you feel that you're involved as all the literature about the restoration says, or do you feel that it is being imposed upon you? And how does that play out?
Definitely the latter is being imposed. For one, my community is not necessarily the most active community in the world. And so most places like, you know, South Florida Water Management District, the Corps, the state, they don't understand that they have to be creative in their outreach programs as well, especially in oppressed communities. But my community is predominantly African American, and we're not part of the decision-making process. And I'm willing to go so far as to say Ms. Larimore has been fighting to educate us about Everglades restoration and the impacts thereof for as far as I can remember. And it seems like she's been a lone voice at times. And it would have been nice if people who were the major players would have came to her aid. But a lot of us still are not informed about the impacts of Everglades restoration. And so we definitely it's being forced on us. And one good example is the proposed buyout of the U.S. sugar land. We talk about 187,000 acres of land and possibly 1,200 to 2,000 jobs. And to this day, they haven't respected the people's willingness to at least want to know, you know, what alternatives do we have in place, or what have they thought, or do they care to know what options we have to bring to the table. And so you mentioned we are at ground zero, and you wouldn't be able to tell if you came to Everglades or to the community. So it's important. Well, I think what we need to do is what I'm doing is personally and with a few people that are willing to help. We're writing letters to like our congressman. I'm building a rapport with our county commissioner. I'm talking to the guy, the director of Office of Tourism, Trade, and Economic Development in the governor's office. We're on a letter writing campaign. And when I do get to a computer with email, I do massive email blasts. And like I say, I wrote a newsletter and write articles like you read in the West Side Gazette, Ms. Peterman. We're just taking all kinds of approaches to get people to pay attention to the Glades and recognize that we're all not as naive as they may think. And a good example is that I had one lady, a county administrator, after I got them spoken at a forum we had, she asked me a question. She said, were you born here? She couldn't believe that someone born in Belgrade could speak articulately. Wow. And then she had the nerve to come back.
You're other, you see.
Yeah, yeah. And she came back not long after that and said, were you raised here? And I couldn't believe that, you know what I'm saying? I was very offended, so that just, it let me know what they thought about my community. So we're in the process now of shattering those stereotypes. So it's definitely important.
See, that's the key. They think we're naive. They think we won't fight back. That's why we need to take action. They think we don't understand what's going on anyway, so they just pass us by. So I'm very happy that you're taking action, and hopefully I'll join you and we'll get other people to, you know, walk the talk. We're not going to take it sitting down.
Excellent, excellent. And I want to address this issue of otherness, because I believe that if we were to put it on the table today in this arena, we would get general agreement around the fact that we're all first and foremost human beings. None of us knows how we got here. None of us knows how or when we're going to leave. Moreover, we are all citizens of these magnificent United States. Therefore, each one of us should be profoundly disturbed when we find that any of our fellow human beings are being treated as less than and other than. So I invoke the power of our common humanity here today and say, let us move on together as one, not as us or them, but all of us together, up in here on this little blue ball, spinning at a gazillion miles in space, okay, as we stand here feeling motionless. Jump on in there, Professor.
Well, it's not much to say, to follow that, but I mean, just to reinforce that, I mean, as we said, there's one race, or we say there are two, there's the human race and the rat race, and you take your choice. And you notice if you choose one, you get excluded from the other. This is, I think this is a key to what we're doing, and I imagine some of this will get addressed in the next panel as well. One of the current expressions going around is that a definition of mental illness is persisting in the same behavior with the expectation of different outcomes. I think as arbitrary as it is, I mean, when you start counting years, so, we just had a new millennium to start, but there's a reality to that, and I think we all sense that the 21st century requires new and better thinking than the bad old 1900s did. We really do need to reassess where we are, how we got here. The fact that, yes, there's one human race. We actually have to start thinking of our situation species-wide. You've heard the expression that the best way to think about our environment is to consider all the land on the planet as a single island. What's happening in Iraq is right down the street. It's happening here, to all intents and purposes. As we renew our thinking, I think we become more functional in going about solving the problems. In the earlier panel, Frank made some excellent points about this whole sense of otherness. I think in addition to that sense of otherness that, okay, we're different from this group of people or that generation of people or that gender or those categories, we have this strange sense of otherness in relation to nature. We even use, we're using it here, we use the word environment. We know what we mean by it, but if we really think about it, it's a gross misnomer. The environment is not, environment means what it surrounds you, but we're not spectators. The environment is not something that's around us. It's something that we're very much a part of. And unless we think of ourselves as, in that way, it's not something for us to decide, oh, what are we going to do with the environment? Well, they say this, we say that. And we really need to be aware of what the environment is doing with us. And we're totally interconnected with it, but we also have inherited all these myths from previous centuries of the human being the pinnacle of creation, and therefore having the right to manage and configure the world not to the greatest good of all of us, as Frank was saying, but when you really look at it, and the generations of our lives today ones, you know, with Rachel Carson's book and Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And, you know, when these awakenings start happening and we start seeing that, well, some of these actions of the past 5 centuries that sounded so good, oh yes, we must build railroads, it's all progress, it's all, you know, has exacted a very terrible price that we now have to, as we look ahead to our future generations, have to work desperately to correct, much as what Nadine is doing.
Like draining of the Everglades, that was the right thing to do then, what they thought about it.
Yes. Well, I thank you so much for so sagely reorienting us to the fact that we and the environment are one. And I think that now would be a really good time to open it up to the audience for participation and questions of the panel. We have 2 mics. So, does anybody have a burning issue that they like? Yes, my brother.
This is a question for Jermaine. In terms of these more youth-oriented things, such as hip-hop activism and also using video technologies, how important do you think it is getting funding from outside sources, or where does funding take place in community organizing? Is it how necessary is it, and like where do you go for funding for specific community organizing?
Well,
Can you say the South Florida Water Management District, which has our tax dollars for that kind of, should use it for that kind of work? Or,
Nah, I think that's very appropriate. I think it's very important because, of course, we're in a capitalistic society. But recently, I just went on a trip to Jacksonville to Preventing Crime in the Black Community conference, and you know how I got there? Some people in the community pooled their resources and sent me there. So first and foremost, I would make it incumbent upon the people who are impacted by decisions of others to realize the need to put $1 or $2 together to fund what's going on, to fund their own liberation.
Yes.
And then we can look at grant opportunities. I have a relationship and a growing relationship with our county commissioner who represents our area. He's a multi-millionaire. And I made him realize that without the people spending their dollars with him, he would have nothing. And so in return, he reciprocates that by just making his funds available to fund small projects like we're going to do this summer. We're going to try to get some youth to paint his business. He'll get something out of it. We'll get something out of it. And he's doing it out of his pocket. No grants, no, through a 501c3 organization. Other than that, and thinking outside the box. Like I say, I did a compilation CD where I brought different people from Belglade, South Bend, Pahokee. Those are the 3 towns that make up the Glades. We have some like inner rivalries for dumb reasons, but I did a compilation where I brought all of those different acts from different cities together, and then we sold the compilation to raise money to have like a fest in the park. And we called it a family affair where all of them got to perform. So that was a way of obliterating the boundaries between the 3 towns. And the money that we raised went back into selling t-shirts, stuff like that. So you got to get creative, but grants are always there. But I like to make the people who are directly impacted by the projects, aware that they need to put their money where their mouths is. I don't care if it's 50 cents, we'll take it.
That's powerful.
I appreciate the question, bro.
I have a question for the 3 of you. Through your experience and interaction with the community of Belgrade, what is your vision, and what do you think the vision would be if they had a chance to actually have an ability to exercise the labor's power of reserve development in their own interest? What do you think it would be like?
I volunteer with some middle school students, and one of the things that I impress upon them is to have a preferred world. And we look at the 10 areas of people activity: labor law, politics, education, economics, war, religion, sex, stuff like health. You understand what I'm saying? And those are all aspects of environmental justice. And so what I do is try to challenge their thinking. And what I'm realizing is they have ideas on how to address the problems. And if given the proper channels to express those ideas, let me just say, I tell them to imagine that all adults were taken off the planet and they had to run their towns. You understand what I'm saying? And it puts them in the mind frame that, how would you control the flow of the canals, the traffic lights? How would you bill, the people for their usage of water? And they're letting me know, whether they know it or not, that they could actually